the risk of flooding. Those papers are published under the authority of the House. Members have raised with me the unsatisfactory responses to written questions provided by a range of ministers. Questions about meetings, reports or events within a specified month have received a reply saying that ministerial diaries will soon be publicly available. According to the Cabinet Minute, ministerial diaries from the beginning of the Parliament until the 31st of December this year will be released on the 30th of April 2019. A 4-month wait for an answer to a written question is not satisfactory when the time frame in standing orders is 6 working days. When the proactive diary release system is operating, it may be that a short wait for replies to general, often known as fishing questions, about monthly engagements and briefings is acceptable. However, that is not the case at present. I expect all of the replies that have declined to provide information on the basis that it will be available under the government's proactive release of diaries policy to be corrected before noon next Thursday.
Of order, Mr Speaker.
A point of order, the Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, what you'll see from the Cabinet paper and Cabinet Minute that was released, as I'm sure you've read it very thoroughly, is that those diaries will be progressively made available by the date that you mentioned is the latest date for them to be made available. For example, in my own case, many of those are already posted online, and my office are working backwards through my diary and posting them as they are completed. Diverting people's attention away from that task to the task of answering written questions, which often deals with the same information, will actually delay the overall release of that diary information.
Well, I just want to make it very clear that this House does not run according to the convenience of the Minister's staff. Who interjected then? Stand, withdraw and apologise.
Withdraw and apologise.
I would have thought that that member of all people should have been the last to interject on that matter. The point that I am trying to make is that there could well be a compromise whereby ministers ask their staff to turn their attention first over the next few days to the areas covered by those written questions, get those up on the website, and then it would be appropriate to point towards those as part of the written answers. If that can't be done, then the answers should just be done properly in the way that's been ruled by speakers in the past.
Further to the point of order, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, in the case of many ministers, those questions cover the entire period of time in question because they've lodged a series of questions for 1 week and then the next 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 week. So in order to be able to answer those, we do have to do the exercise of releasing all of the information. So it makes a lot more sense to do that in a systematic way rather than trying to answer those questions, some of which it will be impossible to answer by the deadline you have fixed, because the process of compiling them will take longer than the deadline that you have fixed because it covers the entirety of the period in question.
Well, I've had a good look at a large sample of the questions and I'm satisfied that the vast majority of them could be answered if ministers' offices were properly organised and turned their minds to it. I am satisfied. I mean, there were only, I think, about 30 of them referred to me. There could well be a lot more, but ministers have been in office for a year now. They've had fair warning of the requirements to have systems in place to answer questions from members of Parliament according to the Speaker's rulings and standing orders, and I expect them to do it. A point of order, the Honourable Shane Jones.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Your reference to the word convenience, though, is not helpful. When you're deluged with 5,400 questions, a large percentage of which are dross, it's not a matter of convenience or otherwise.
No, that is no. Member will stand, withdraw and apologise. That's
withdraw and apologise. Speaking to the point of order.
No, there is not a point of order. I just want to make it clear to Mr Jones that the comment that he made was one which, in one way, stated the obvious. We all know, and probably no one more than myself that it is relatively easy to generate questions, some of which result in important information and most of which result in not much. But it is the right of members of Parliament to ask those questions. The government is doing a good thing as far as the proactive release of briefings and diaries. I know that the member himself has indicated that he wasn't that comfortable with that approach, but we're heading towards that. It will be more efficient, but until that time, the current rules apply. Right, we now come to oral questions. Question number 1 in the name of Dr. Duncan Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.